the wearer. All right, so now we have our second section, which is cultivate curiosity and creativity. We all assume that we're going to be able to be creative at the drop of a hat, or that we have the luxury of waiting for the muse to come. And that's one thing that if you're a professional fashion designer, you just don't have. So we'll start off with this one from Anna Wintour. One doesn't want fashion to look ridiculous, silly, or out of step with the times, but you do want designers that make you think, that make you look at fashion differently. That's how fashion changes. If it doesn't change, it's not looking forward, and that's important to me. So now, cultivate curiosity and creativity. Fashion school can be an ideal place to celebrate and encourage creativity. It is definitely easier to sustain the spirit of creativity within that safe environment. What is definitely harder to do is build systems and routines that keep us curious and help us exercise our creative muscles once we are on the job. Burnout is a very real problem in the workplace, especially creative workplaces. The fashion industry is constantly demanding something new. What do you do when it seems as though there is nothing new to give and you need to deliver on demand? A designer that can reconnect with the essence of the experiences that called them into a career in fashion and initiate that process on a regular basis will build a bank of stimuli that allows them to always have something at the ready and go deeper into these areas than they ever did in school. Now, when you're asked in school to research something, to collect pictures for a mood board, these are all assignments that we're trying to get done. And granted, we will get excited about it and put our energy into it. But once in school, you usually work on projects that last for the whole semester, right? You have all this luxury of time of figuring things out, repeating the process, getting educated on the process. On the job, that's not a luxury that you have. You have to go through one project, and even halfway through the process of that particular project, you need to start thinking about the next project because there's an overlap. So you are always being challenged to come up with new ideas. And this is where having these systems to keep creativity alive for you are really important. A designer can reconnect, I read that. There are ways back into the creative foundations for a fashion designer. The craft of fashion, putting theory into practice and content into context, a sense of play, and creative collaboration. Reinforcing our connections to these creative fundamentals will prevent them from deteriorating, and returning to them will be as different each time as we are over time. So one of the quotes that I love that we use in the book is this one by Carla Fernandez: "The future of fashion is handmade." Often we think about fashion and innovation and the future of it as all being about all these great things that are happening in technology and in science. And the truth of the matter is that there is this growing pushback in fashion that is trying to get back to basics. And again, getting in touch with this maker spirit and also slowing down. So slow fashion is the antidote to fast fashion. And this means, garments that are going to be a little more expensive, that are going to take a little bit more time. But this means that the designer is putting the definition of boundaries in terms of how they work on their work, rather than being pushed into a system that they may not want to or be able to compete in. So this whole handmade culture is very important. And for those of you who don't know Carla, I encourage you to check her out online. She not only does beautiful fashion, but she is based in Mexico and works with indigenous communities to keep their craft alive. So a lot of these people who had to become nannies and house cleaners and leave their homes and their villages and have other people take care of the kids can now stay in their own communities. And she goes to them, and she not only just takes their ideas, she doesn't come in and swoop in and say, oh, I love that, I'm going to put that on a dress. She studies with them. She learns their craft, and then they end up producing the product. So it's an incredible model for working in fashion and keeping all these crafts alive. Now, many of these women can stay in their villages with their own children and keep this incredible craft alive, which is one of my favorite designers. So T.S. Eliot, this really kind of comes down to there's actually a book that good artists copy and great artists steal. Now, the idea behind this is really that not about copying or reproducing what someone else has done, but really using it as a jumping off point. In the art world, we find a lot of education around fine art means reproducing the work of masters so that you can get into their headspace. You can really start to explore why they chose those brush strokes and why these particular colors were, keep repeating themselves throughout their paintings. So in fashion, I always encourage my students to think about reproducing a garment, but again, not the way we would think about it in the fashion industry, which would be about knocking something off, right, and selling it as your own. That's not the point at all, but really to get to that space where you can imagine cutting something on the bias like Madeleine Vionnet, or sculpting a gown like a Balenciaga. So it's really an exercise to hone your skills. And then finally, another artist, Matisse. Creative people are curious, flexible, persistent, independent, with a tremendous spirit and of adventure and a love of play. All true, I think, and especially that last part is one of the points that we make in the book is about this sense of play that should never go away. I find this with students especially. You're going through the process in school and you're getting really stressed out. You're feeling like, I'm not getting it right the first time. And they don't allow themselves to be students, and they also don't introduce the sense of play into their work and have fun with it. And I think if you can master that, it makes a huge difference throughout the process, and then if you can bring it into the workforce, you become, not only does it foster creativity, but it fosters great relationships with the people that you're working with. All right, the third chapter. So our quote is short and brief. Nobody cares how good you used to be. Okay? And this is Paul Smith, who I love, is an English designer, menswear designer mostly. And it's so true because like we see, the speed of fashion alone, one season you have this great collection and everyone loves you, and the next season, not so much. So you want to figure out that, how to navigate those times in between and how to learn from the things that you did. Because oftentimes when you speak to a designer and you ask them what was their favorite collection, and then you ask them right afterwards, was that your most successful collection? Those usually don't go hand in hand. Often what sells may not be what that artist actually gets most excited about. So developing professionally. Here is kind of that final stage. You think of yourself as developing professionally while you're at school. You're learning your skills, maybe you're making some contacts, but there is a whole other element to it when you get onto the workforce, because a lot of times when you graduate, you feel like, oh, I'm done. I can move on and start making money. And if you do that, then you're stuck exactly where you ended. So wherever you ended at school, that's where you are until you decide to add to the menu. And that's really the way to look at it. Broadening the menu and adding more skills, more experiences, and more strategies to what you're doing. So reading for the text, for the intro for this, there's always something new to learn. Learning new things should feel like a calling, not like a chore. However, human nature has a way of allowing us to become complacent once we feel we put in our dues and achieved a measure of success. This can prove to be the beginning of the end for a robust and rewarding fashion career. It might not be overt, but a designer is always being assessed by their clientele, the industry, and the media. Whether it's a conscious act or instinct, designers are being judged by how they can measure up against current standards. This is particularly true of, for instance, fashion shows. Right now we're in the middle of Fashion Week, and one of the things I've been trying to do for the past couple of years especially is discourage fashion shows. Now you would think that would be kind of counterproductive to producing a fashion week. But I'm not saying don't display your work, but find ways to work, for instance, that you can put on shows that are really, put on presentations that really show your work to the best benefit. Most smaller designers can't afford to do a show really well. And the public is looking at their shows, and they, unless they're family and friends and really supportive, they are not looking at their shows or presentations in a really warm way. They're comparing them to everything they see. And nowadays we have access to everything online, right? So we just watched live stream the Dior show, and all of a sudden we're going to a smaller, newer designer, and they're putting on a show and they're doing their best efforts. But let's say the lighting is not happening, right? You can barely see the garments. That is definitely going to work against them, because that's what they're going to remember. People are going to remember from the show. So this really speaks to that in terms of how people are perceiving our work. Continue to build a broad base of knowledge and experience is one of the most valuable investments a designer can make in their future. Being a lifetime learner should include both traditional methods as well as customizing learning strategies. Many fashion designers overlook the valuable inheritance that the industry provides, your fashion history. Every idea, strategy, and business model that has come before has the potential to provide a designer with the tools for advancement. Professional development also demands action. Part of a designer's job involves predicting what will succeed in the marketplace, and taking more educated risks is a distinct advantage. And this really comes into forecasting. A lot of designers find a hard time kind of predicting what will sell, what will be in fashion, but the more educated you are and the more in touch you are with the latest trends and strategies and skills and tools, those percentages change in your favor. So, we'll start off with, don't be afraid to take time to learn. It's good to work with other people. I worked for others for 20 years and they paid me to learn. So this is about taking your time, going slow, going smart, and really taking that as a continued learning experience. Our next one, this one, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. So we give ourselves often too many titles, like,